Welcome back, everyone. It's me, the narrator. This is the special Christmas episode. So, for this reason, today Mr. Midnight will not be joining us and hosting this episode, as it is a joyful occasion. So, Merry Christmas, guys. And wait, what's going on? Hey, can you guys hear me?
You thought you wouldn't see me today. You thought you could actually detain me. Well, children, welcome to your nightmares. This is Mr. Midnight speaking. I welcome you all to my Christmas grove. So come into my little lair and let me give you a few festive scares. A few stories from beyond the grave. We will be renaming Christmas to Nightmas. So make sure you are ready, because I am going to scare you to death. So let's begin. And always remember, the darkness always follows. And now, I will leave you with my narrator, who thought he could actually detain me. Well, he has another thing coming. So just wait and see, and enjoy as I feast on your fears.
Number 1. Kids in the Woods. When I was around 12 years old, I was at my cousin's house for a party. It was around Christmas time. We were hanging out in their backyard and woods. Part of their backyard is wooded area, and we came to this tree that used to have a tree house in it. All that is left of that tree house is some steps leading to it, and a few platforms, which is not safe. My cousin told us this story about how the kids who had that treehouse had died when it collapsed. I personally thought this was a bunch of crap, but went with it. We eventually headed back to the house, but I decided to go back into the woods alone. As I was walking into the woods, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me, like I was safe there, safer than anywhere else. As I'm walking, I'm looking around and I see a light blue and white checkered flag up in a super thin tree that I didn't notice before. As I'm looking at this and trying to figure out how it got there, I started to hear kids' voices, laughing, talking, just having fun. I didn't think too much of it at the time, as my cousins were out in the treehouse. A new one they built, not the old rundown one. As I'm walking closer to the old treehouse, the voices seemed louder, and I looked back at the flag. It was moving, despite there not being any wind. I shook it off as I couldn't feel the wind from down here, but up there was wind, and looked back down. That's when I saw them. 6 children with white skin, like snow white skin. They all seemed to be wearing winter gear, though dull and dirty looking. They were walking towards me, but I didn't run. I wasn't afraid for some reason. I heard a branch snap, and that's when I ran. As I went back towards my cousin's house, I was just surprised to see that they weren't outside. I found them in the living room, playing video games. When I asked them when they came in, they said, "When you were walking to the woods." Why? The kids I heard weren't them. I still don't know to this day who those kids were. They weren't other neighbor kids, as none of them lived close to my cousins. Were they a figment of my imagination? Whatever it was, it's one of the reasons I now believe. Number 2. Phantom Road. One of the scariest moments in my life came from something I cannot explain. It's something I think about every time I drive down that road, and it's something I continue trying to figure out. That day, hard to believe, but it was almost 11 years ago. Back when I was in college, I had to take a few night classes to finish my program. I was going to school for drafting, and one of the classes covering inventor was only offered at 5 p.m. This was a bit of a pain for me, as I lived with my parents still, and the college was located an hour away. So getting off at 3 p.m., then driving home and heading back was pointless. That's why I typically stayed and just killed time at school until it was time for my classes. Sometimes my dad, who worked down the street from the school, would wait around, and my mum would meet us for dinner. But other times it was just me killing time. Yeah, it was a pain, but you do what you have to do. One day near the end of the semester, both of my parents decided to meet up with me just as we had before. It was getting close to Christmas, and this town happened to be where our closest mall was located. So they decided to use the chance to get in some Christmas shopping. And after we finished eating, they did just that. I went to school, they went shopping, and that was that. Or at least, I thought. With the inventor class, despite it lasting a few hours, you could leave whenever you wanted. We were allowed to work ahead, and the teacher didn't care when you left as long as your assignment was done. Being someone who picked up on the program and 3D modeling quick, I was in a group of kids who were constantly 10 or so models ahead. So it didn't matter when I left usually. This being the end of the semester, however, I was out of work to do. I reached the end, so I ended up leaving class extra early. So I called my parents to let them know. They were still at the mall, so I drove over there to meet up with them. I did some shopping myself, and then we packed up the 2 cars to leave. Since they had gifts for me, my dad decided to drive 1 car, while my mum went with me in mine. Dad left first, so I didn't see what they had inside, and I took out after him. Back then, I still hated driving at night. Heck, I still do. So I followed him closely on the way back. My dad is a crazy, safe driver, so he drives slow, annoyingly slow. So it took longer following him, but it was okay. I felt safer with him in the lead. Getting close to home, we arrived at the T outside and the town I'll call RL. My dad was at the stop sign, ready to turn left, but a car was coming. So my dad, being an extra safe driver, he proceeded to peel out and cut the guy off. Now, RL isn't the safest town around, and when the guy slammed on his brakes and stopped in the road, I was scared. This is where people would get shot, and the guy stopping terrified me. I sat at the stop sign myself and had no idea what to do. Do I go? Do I wait? What is this crazy guy going to do? I sat there for a few minutes freaked out before my mum finally said, "Just go." So I did, and the whole time I kept my eyes on the grey car as I slowly pulled out and passed them. They are gone! My mum screaming, shocked me, and I remember saying, "What are you talking about?" As I too realized the car I was passing was not there. In fact, another car then passed through where the first car was sitting. The car was gone. Where I was looking now, the space was empty. Later, when I got home, we asked my dad about it, and he was confused. He wouldn't answer a cell phone while driving. According to him, there was never a car. He wondered why we had stopped, and said we were the only ones on the road, minus the guy he passed down the road 5 or so minutes later. So what did we see? Every time I passed that road, I looked to see if maybe something could have reflected light and made it look like a car. But there is nothing there, just a cornfield. Number 3. A Christmas visit from Grandma. My grandma died when I was very young. It affected me deeply because she had been watching me at the time while my mum was out. She died in front of me and I reacted as best I could being a child. I went to my aunt and uncle's house who lived just behind me. All I knew was that something was wrong with grandma because she'd fallen down the stairs. The EMTs came after they called 911, but nothing could be done. She had passed. For the longest time, I had trouble dealing with it. I spent the longest time blaming myself and hurting deeply over it. This has been the most traumatic experience in my life. Shortly after she died, we moved into the home she lived in to take care of my great-grandma. Though with time, it has healed as best it can. The one thing I do think about when I think of my grandma is Christmas. If there was ever a truer person that embodied love and the spirit of the season, it was my grandma. She would gather all my relatives, aunts, uncles and cousins to her house for a holiday feast and gathering everyone from far and near. Because my grandma was pretty much the matriarch of the family. The entire glue that was our family was held together by her hands, not to mention her food. If there's one thing she could do well, it was cook. But her expertise, I think, was baking. I have fond and vivid memories of gathering apples from the apple tree in the backyard for her, where she would bake pies, crisps, and whatever else she could do with them, though her cookies were the best. I loved my grandma's cookies and she made the best chocolate chip in the world. I stake my life on it, and I remember her kitchen always being filled with the most wonderful smells imaginable. I recall a time during the holiday season when I was really missing her. It had been many years since she had passed and I was trying to come to grips with her dying when I was so young. I was sitting in my bedroom thinking about it and talking to her in my head. I was feeling rather upset over it, really. I miss you, Grandma. It was the thought in my head that came, and shortly after it did, there was a loud sound in the kitchen. The sound was a clash of pots and pans, almost like someone was getting them out and tossing them on the countertops. We had cats at the time, so I assumed they were being ornery and had knocked things over. So I went into the kitchen to investigate. There was nothing, not a cupboard open or anything strewn about, nor was there a pot or pan out of place, and as well as nothing at all on the countertops themselves. It was confusing to say the least. I shrugged it off as an odd occurrence and went back to my room. Though it was then that the whole house filled with the most pungent and wonderful smell of someone baking. Not just the kitchen, but the entire house itself permeated with what smelled like a mix of brownies and cookies being made. My heart was strangely warmed by it. I had forgotten about being sad, though it dawned on me that it wasn't just a weird occurrence. I am convinced that it was my grandmother coming back to comfort me, to let me know she was still around and tell me she loved me in the best way she knew how. The story doesn't end on that note, however. When my mum came home from work that day, as soon as she walked through the door, she said, "It smells like someone's been baking in here. Merry Christmas, Grandma." Number 4. My grandpa came to see me for Christmas. This is a hard story to tell because it was my best and worst experience dealing with the supernatural. It's the best because it proves not all ghost stories are about vengeful spirits and the dark shadows that go bump in the night. It's the worst because, just listen for yourselves. It was a week before the first Christmas after my grandpa died, and I had stayed the night at my grandma's after we'd gone Christmas shopping the day before. My grandma was still taking it hard, and I had been trying to help cheer her up. We had just gone out to do some more shopping for gifts, boxes, and paper, the usual wrapping stuff. Then we went to McDonald's to grab some takeout for lunch. When we got back, we ate lunch and watched Christmas movies in the living room till my mum got there to pick me up. I guess all that shopping wore her out, 'cause halfway through the movie we were watching my grandma fall asleep. As I was sitting there, I started to think about my grandpa. We were always really close, and his passing really hit me hard, and I was trying to not show it around my grandma. I was missing him a lot, and I didn't actually want to stay over at my grandma's house as much as I used to, because being there brought up all the memories of him, and it made me miss him more. I never even went into his bedroom anymore because it was just too sad. While my grandma was sleeping, I tried to pay attention to the movie, but all I could think about was my grandpa and all the fun stuff we did for Christmas and how I just wanted to see him again. Then all of a sudden, the room started to feel cold. At first, I thought it was a draft, but then everything felt heavy and it got quite real quiet. The clock stopped ticking. There were no car noises, no nothing. It was like the whole world had just stopped. It looked as if the colour had started to fade away till everything just turned grey. Then my whole body felt like pinprickles, and it felt like someone was watching me. As I looked up, I almost screamed in shock. There in the doorway that led into the hall was my grandpa. He was just standing there, smiling at me, wearing his favourite cream colour, brown pinstripe shirt sleeve button-up shirt, blue jeans, brown belt, white socks, brown loafers and brown glasses. The only thing different was a kind of glow around him. I sat there frozen for what seemed like an hour. Then I started to stand up. I don't know why, but maybe to hug him, or maybe just to touch him to see if actually he was there. I don't know, but the second I got to my feet, he was gone. And the world went back to normal, with all the sounds and colour back, like someone had just hit the unpause button. I just stood there for a second, then realised I was crying, and I went to get a tissue. An hour later, my mum came and got me. She and my grandma talked for a bit, while I stayed quiet, debating on whether or not to tell them what happened. I decided not to say anything to my grandma just yet. I told my mum everything on the car ride home when she noticed I was nervous about something. My mum was so shocked she had to pull the car over. She asked me like a million questions, mostly if I was positive on what I saw, and each time I told her yes, and describing the whole thing over and over again. And then I started to cry, and she hugged me to calm me down, even though she was crying too. When we calmed down, she told me it was okay, but never to tell my grandma about what I saw that day. After that, I still visited my grandma, but never by myself, and I didn't stay overnight again. The weirdest part of it all was that even though I was freaking out at what I saw, a part of me wanted to see him again. And now I will be reviewing each story and also mentioning the authors so you can show love to them and read the stories and comment on the original posts. These posts can be found on Reddit. So the first story is by Starry Alpha and it's called The Kids in the Woods. Now it was very scary, I have to give it that. And the question is, why was it so scary? The answer is simple. It's a two-word answer. I think we all know it. Demon children. That's why. That's why it was scary. Now, children are scary, but demon children are the worst. And another thing I would like to say that, my friend, it wasn't your imagination. Now, the second story is by Neto Saito, and the story was called Phantom Road. It sounds like you have a ghost car or a possessed car on your hands. Maybe next time you go on that road and you see that car, you should stop and talk to the possessed driver and ask him for his driving license, because driving like that is very dangerous. But seriously, I would be very creeped out about the whole ordeal. I don't know how you kept your crap together. The third and fourth story. The third one was by Poetic License to Kill, A Christmas Visit from Grandma, and the fourth one was by Chaos Breezy, and the story was called My Grandpa Came to See Me for Christmas. Now, both of these stories are very sad and beautiful, and that's why I put them together, because they were very similar. And I also recently lost a relative, so I can relate to these stories. We all want to meet our lost loved ones one last time and talk to them and finally say goodbye and let them go. But deep down, we all know that we are not ready to say goodbye to them. So these two stories really touched me, and I love them. So I would suggest you show all of these authors some love and share their posts if you can. And thank you all for listening. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share the video. It helps me, I guess. And take care. And I'm going to leave Mr. Midnight. He was very angry with me, so I'm going to leave him to do the outro. So take care.
Well, my children, thank you for listening. I hope this festive time brings you many nightmares. I'll see you again very soon. So until then, love the darkness as it always follows.